In my last video, I talked about what a Lear Garden school garden program would look like. And you may have noticed that there was a little bit of money left over. And today we're going to talk about ways that we could potentially use that to expand the school garden program without any additional funding. So that's what we're going to run into today. Welcome to Lear Innovations channel. My name is Edmund Williams, and today we're talking about a school garden program. So first of all, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the numbers that I carried forward. If you haven't watched the other video, I strongly recommend that you subscribe and go back and look at that video. And it's going to give you a lot of information about how that school garden program would look like. Today we're going to talk mostly about the financials behind sort of expanding that program. Again, as I mentioned in the last video, if a Lear Garden company is run as a soil creation company, then putting in more gardens actually counts as infrastructure. And so I wanted to talk about that first. So if we look at 4 by 24 beds, those are farm beds. It's the largest bed that we build. And we could put in 2 beds or 4 beds. I'm mostly going to be looking at 4 beds here. But so looking at the price, this is a little bit less than we would normally put in. Look at it as wholesale price versus retail price. So the cost of 2 beds would be $6,500, and that's what we talked about in the last video. But really, for a production bed, something that's going to produce a lot of produce for a school, and be really profitable enough to expand the program, I wanted to look at 4 beds. So that's going to be about twice that, so $13,000. So the yield of the LEHR Soil Amplifier goes from 200, of course, to 400, with the value being $6,000 worth of LEHR Soil Amplifier. And that, again, is at that $30 per gallon, where $15 of that is going to somebody else, be shipping or the store's cut if we're putting it in a store. But if we put it in at $45 a gallon, which I think is a little bit closer to what it's actually worth as we build that reputation and build those markets, then we're looking at more like $12,000 of soil amplifier coming out of the program. And this is an annual, so we're going to be resetting those beds once a year during the summer break, and then the gardens will be ready when the kids come back from school. So we're looking at $12,000 coming out of that. So let's talk about the costs. So the cost, it wouldn't actually be quite double, but for the sake of the argument here, we'll just say it's going to cost about $2,000 to reset that garden once a year. The maintenance cost, actually, there's so little maintenance on a Lear garden that mostly the maintenance is going to be a technician coming in once a month, spending about an hour poking over the garden, running the pumps, checking out the timers, and just making sure that everything works. So a lot of that's going to be travel time. There may be a couple of questions from staff, but I'm assuming a billing rate of $100 an hour, which is a little bit conservative, but the difference between 2 beds and 4 beds isn't significant on that. So we're still going to go with the same $1,200, which means we have an operational cost going from $2,200 to $3,200. So the remainder, again, on this guy is we have $800 on 2 beds, which isn't a lot if you're going to be building a program. But if we get to the 4 beds, that way more than doubles. It's $2,800 a remainder, and then at $45 a gallon, it jumps to $8,800. So that's actually pretty significant, because again, if you're looking at $6,500 for 2 beds, what's it going to take to add another school to that system? So that's basically what this is. So just a quick outline of what I'm doing here. We'll talk about the funding, and then these are years: year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so let's just say, for example, that we get $130,000 worth of funding. Okay, so if we're looking at $13,000, that's going to be enough for us to build 10 school gardens. So that's 4 beds each in 10 different schools. Okay, so we'll call that year 0. Okay, so year one, our operation cost is for running those 10 gardens is $32,000. And the remainder is $28,000. So that remainder again is what's left over after we've paid ourselves. And again, I want to point out that operational cost profit is included in that. That's not a break even number. That's something that we can live pretty comfortably on in terms of covering our costs. Okay, so with that $28,000, take that back out to $13,000 per school. We're going to add an additional 12 gardens, or 12 or additional 2 schools. So that brings us up to 12. Okay, so then we get to year 2, adding those numbers up, we get to $38,400 in operational costs because we have a little bit more. And so these 1, 2, 3, 4, that's just copying these same categories on down. So then the remainder is going to be $33,600. So we're still adding another 2 schools, so we get to 4. And I do want to be clear in terms of the background math. I didn't put it here. If we have $28,000, 2 times 13,000 is 26. So that 2,000 just gets carried forward. So there's a little bit of a bump farther on as those carryovers add up to a new garden. So I wanted to be clear that number is in there. I wasn't clear about it for my number nerds out there. Okay, so end of year 2, we're looking at 14 garden beds. Again, the operational costs go up by a little bit, the remainder goes up by more. So we're adding an additional 3 for a total of 17. Then we get to year 4, we're adding 4 for a total of 21. Year 5, we're still at 4 for a total of 25. So this is a program that's going to continue to grow. But I wanted to show you just how big of a difference it makes when we have much larger numbers, when the soil amplifier is selling for more. And honestly, $30 versus $45 a gallon for that soil amplifier isn't huge, but assuming that $15 per gallon stays the same, that number actually goes up pretty significantly faster. So, okay, so again, we're starting with the $130,000. We're building 10 gardens. We're coming in with the operational costs are actually not going to change, other than the fact, not going to change per garden, but as the number of gardens goes up faster, then those operational costs will go up faster. So our remainder in year 1 is $88,000. That means instead of building 2 gardens, we're building an additional 6, which gets us to 16. Okay, now we're going to start to snowball here. Okay, so again, $140,000 remainder. So we're going to be building 11 additional beds, which gets us to 27. Year 3, we're going to build 18, which gets us to 45. Year 4, we're going to get 31 additional beds, which gets us to 76. And then year 5 here, we're looking at 51 additional beds. So again, there's enough money to pay staff and the team to get out there and build these gardens. We're definitely going to have to hire people to maintain more gardens, but we're looking just by the end of the 5th year, we've got 127 schools that have an additional have 4 self-running, freely maintained garden beds. And I want to be clear that initial investment, it hasn't changed. The $130,000, I imagine that we could find a school or find a grant or something that could get us that funding, and then we could kind of get that program rolling. Now, of course, the price of the market price of the LEHR Soil Amplifier is going to be a little bit dependent on the market, not something that we have control over. But again, if we're looking at the LEHR Gardens enterprise as a soil operation, we're looking at how many gallons are we produce. At the end of 5 years, we're producing 10,000 gallons a year. Let's see here. Let me take this down a little bit. we're looking at 10,000 gallons a year versus at the end of at $45 a gallon, we're looking at 50,800 gallons per year produced. And so it's something that really does make a pretty big difference. So, and of course, the other thing that's really nice about this is that it's a win-win. It's a mutually beneficial situation where we have the Lear Garden program is being profitable. They're doing it at no additional cost to the school. The schools are benefiting from getting a really large garden with a whole lot of things that the students can learn from, between learning food production, learning ecology, learning biology, learning STEM. There's a lot to it. So this is definitely something that could be potentially very, very profitable. And I'd love to see if we can figure out a way to make this work.